I was working in the radio and television arm of the United States Senate, interviewing senators about everything from the State of the Union to the super colliders in their state. So I learned a little bit about production then, but I really wanted to be an actress. So I got my degree in theater. I toured with a national company. And when my husband moved to Chicago, I just spent about 15 years raising our 4 boys. And at some point, my husband said he really wanted me to go back and do what I love to do. So he bought me voiceover classes, and I then could do that from home. And that was sort of the beginning of my filmmaker journey in Chicago. And I started volunteering, producing on people's films. I became a field reporter for NBC, E! Entertainment, and Inside Edition. So when I went to Normandy in 2015 and I saw a story that needed to be told, I thought, well, I have to tell this story. How hard could it be? It was very hard, and it's a miracle that I'm sitting here.
Nah.
Wow.
My turn.
Yeah.
Okay. Hi everyone. My name is Chen Drachman. I'm based in New York for the last 11 years. I'm originally from Israel, and I guess my background with filmmaking in Israel, you can actually pick majors in high school. I was a film and TV major in high school, specialty in script writing, production, and editing. And then I've done my mandatory army service. It's a little thing we have to do in Israel. Yeah. And then I moved to New York to study musical theater. And that was a decade ago. And ever since then, kind of like combining the acting and the filmmaking world. And the Book of Ruth, which is my short that's screened at the festival. I am the executive producer, writer, and one of the cast members. It's actually a 2020 selection, so we're very lucky that the festival invited us back this year because we didn't get to screen anywhere live this past year. So this was our physical premiere, which was really exciting. It's a 14 minutes short that took 5 years to make, so it's not at all easy. Yeah, and our star is Tony and Emmy Award nominee Tova Feldshuh. I recommend you come and see it tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. if you can.
My story really came from an event. My son was in the 101st Airborne Division, and he had won Soldier of the Year and was going to another Soldier of the Year competition when they changed the requirements at the last minute, and because he didn't have a class, he was disqualified from the competition. And he was so angry about that because he lost the opportunity to win a car and money and all this other stuff. And I talked him through that crisis and said, you know, I'm a Christian, and I said to him, God loves you, and things happen for a reason in your life, and something better will come from this. Just trust me. I've walked with God long enough to know amazing things can happen out of rejection. And not long later, he called me and he said, Mom, as a consolation prize, the Army is sending me to France. And I said, we're going to France? And he's like, no. And I said, just watch me. And, you know, when your child is going to do something amazing, even though you don't know what it is, you want to be there to see it. He is my oldest son. And so by hook or crook, I found my way there. I didn't speak the language. I'd never driven in a foreign country. I just was completely lost. And that was comedic, getting from Paris all the way out to Normandy, never knowing how to drive or speak the language. But I did finally get there, and when I ended up in Normandy, he could not tell me where he was. He said, I'm in some field where they're doing a parachute drop, and I really just
Very
had
specific.
to... Yeah, I mean, and there's fields everywhere in Normandy. If you've never been there, it's basically like rural Mississippi, and it's cow farms everywhere, so it was not easy to find him. And when I did find him, I was just blown away by what I saw. They had recreated the Normans, 1944 France, in a remarkable, authentic way. And I was there 10 minutes when I found him, and a woman came up and said, this jacket that was given to my mother in 1944 by an American GI. And I said, is your mother still alive? Yeah, she's right here, and my father is too. And I was filming at that moment when I asked them what they remembered about D-Day, and the rest was history.
Wow.
And so it was that moment that really charted the course for my life for the next 5 years. I tried to get other people to tell the story, my friends in the industry, and no one bit. So I thought, well, somebody's got to do this. It can't be that hard, like I said.
Should I go? I'll go.
Go for it.
Yeah, I mean, with the book, it's really weird. The Book of Ruth is sort of inspired by an article or like an adaptation of a teeny tiny thing that came up in an article. I don't want to say too much for those of you who might see tomorrow, but something I'm working on now came up. Right now I'm working actually on a Hanukkah rom-com. It's basically
I love it.
I know I spent like a year during this pandemic watching Christmas rom-coms and like just turning it into a science in a Christmas matrix is how I call it. It's like a huge spreadsheet with every possible trope you can think about and drew it up a little bit.
Yeah, I love it.
But that came up because I saw a lot of Jewish friends on Twitter talking in the last few Christmases like, when's our turn? And then like people would start like throwing the most crazy scenarios of how a Hanukkah rom-com would look like. So I mean, sometimes it comes in dreams. I'm not trying to sound all like Zanny at all. I'm very the opposite of that. But you never know when it's gonna. Sometimes it's just a snippet in the paper, and that's So.
She got an idea for a script last night or 2 nights ago, misunderstanding what someone had said.
Yeah. Micah's not here, but we were talking about, he told me the title of his film, and it sounded like he said Shoah Mitzvah. Shoah is the Hebrew word for Holocaust. And I said, did you say Shoah Mitzvah? Is this about a child, a 13-year-old boy, celebrating his bar mitzvah during the Holocaust? That would actually be something really interesting to see how that would look like. So he's maybe working on it now. I'll take residuals. We'll talk about it, yeah.
I think it's like giving the space to be able to give out more awards. But what would be unfortunate is if you really should have won just the best picture, but they're like, oh, but we need to fill this slot and we'll move you over there. I mean, who knows? But,
it's a catch-22.
Yeah. I also distinguish between my identity and the work because I'm very proud to be a woman filmmaker, and I think there is a lens to that I appreciate. But I wouldn't want my job to be judged as I would want my job to be judged just as a filmmaker. Right. So I think you can, it gets that certain thing that comes from my worldview, and again, not just as a woman, but it would be like a member of the LGBTQ community, or depending on with what you are minority-wise. But then there's just the work itself and what you.
I am from Mississippi. There's a patriarchal society there, and I only learned my own prejudice. Chen and I were talking about this when I went on my first shoot. I went to Mississippi to film a World War II veteran, and I needed a camera, a DP, and my friend there said, you have 3 choices, 2 guys and a woman, and I said, give me the 2 guys. And I couldn't believe it. I didn't even recognize at the time what I'd said, but I was like, she probably wouldn't be any good. I'm sure that's what I thought. Yeah. Well, the 2, and I didn't, it exposed my own bias.
Yeah.
It exposed my own bias that I didn't even know was there. And so the 2 guys couldn't do it.
Wow.
And so I had the female DP. And she was awesome. She was awesome. And it really taught me a lesson. About undervaluing or just not giving a chance to, and she was so good. I ended up having her. She's still running my social media department because she was getting a marketing degree at Ole Miss, and we took her to Normandy, so she helped us with social media there. And then she ended up being an assistant camera person as well as an assistant sound person, and she's been phenomenal to our project. So those are those experiences that I learned during that time. But other thing that was interesting is that there have been men who have come alongside me and believed in me. And they are people in the community that have stature. And then there are people just like this little kid over here, Sam King, who volunteered fresh out of film school because he believed in what I was doing. And so I've had a lot of gentlemen come alongside me and support me and speak for me and vouch for me. I had an incredible male editor and a composer and a sound designer. So I don't want to bash men because they really are, when they come alongside the women and support them, it's powerful and it helps us.
We can do things without allies. Like people tend to think, oh, we don't need that, but It would be nice to be acknowledged as like theater goers to start. So like that's the thing. What women are like, what, 49% of the world's like it's basically half. We're not being treated that way. Right. Not in the storytelling, not in job opportunities, not in salaries. I would just love to see. Right now we have like one woman who is an action film female director, and that's Patty Jenkins. Can we see more of that? Like we don't need the one person in that position. So it would just be nice to see, oh, this is a woman's movie, we'll let a woman direct it. I don't want to see that anymore.
Yeah.
I want to see like women just directing anything and everything.
There's all kinds of people and all kinds of interests, and we need to see every interest being propped up or analyzed.
And even that term, right, strong female character that we've been hearing for the longest time, what people think when they hear that, or have been thinking for the longest time, is like, oh, this badass female who can kick ass. But what is a strong female character? There's
Right,
so
a
many ways
resilient
they-
person. Can it just
Yeah.
be a resilient person
Exactly.
who's
Yeah.
quiet? Which is kind of what I think maybe what they're feeling about like Frances McDormand in Nomadland. It's a very quiet character, not a lot of dialogue, but there's a sense of her resilience. So maybe that's a good example of a 2021 strong
Yeah, I think it's
female.
getting, like, I think that term is, what it means is changing slowly. Like you see more.
And
different
it
types of
also,
characters.
but then with that, it kind of becomes a cliche, and so it's like, how do we keep that
Yeah, yeah.
real?
Yeah.
Before we open it up to the audience, I did want to ask too, just advice you have in general.
If you want to do it, just step outside and do it. Don't wait for the project to come to you. Make your own work, and then do not stop. Do not be deterred. Do not be discouraged. Just keep going.
And maybe like when it comes to doubts, like, I feel like the hardest step is that first one. I wish I could do this, but I can't do this, so just do it
Yeah.
anyway.
Just think, how
Yeah.
hard could it be?
Pretty hard, but
Don't even think about that.
But like,
Don't even think about
do it
that.
anyway.
Yeah, don't even
Yeah.
think about how hard it can be. I mean, you just decide to do it.
And it's actually a really good point, because one of the things that women continuously say in Hollywood is that I never done it because I didn't feel prepared, while men just feel like they can go and try. We have the tendency, what?
They don't even think like that.
Yeah, we have the tendency to be like, oh, but I can do it. I can't do it, so just try.
Yeah, we
and-
can't learn as we go. We have to be perfect.
Yeah.
That's like the whole martyrdom
So
thing.
we
Like, we have
don't
to be
perfect,
perfect,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Because it makes you tough, and it makes you realize it's not about you. I mean, I think that's the other thing. I think you were saying this earlier. Like, when you are doing something, if you are rejected, or if you fail, or if you're not accepted for something, like when all of these people rejected me in the World War II community, it was not because I was the problem. It was because they did not have eyes to see
Absolutely.
my potential.
We're great, they just don't know it.
Absolutely.
Right.
My answer is problematic. Well, I learned English watching Buffy the Vampire Slayer. That's how I learned it. Yeah. So for the longest time, Joss Whedon, who's a sore subject today,
Yeah.
unfortunately, but I thought he was a master writer, script writer. So between him and Tina Fey on 30 Rock, that was really a good combo of like humor, a lot of cultural references that I really like. Let's stick with Tina Fey. I think today that's and for the theme of today's panel. Yeah, but it was nice because for me it felt like school, just really critically watching their work, breaking it down in my brain. It's easier in the last few years. There are like a lot of women that you can say, but I also think, I guess that's half advice, you don't really want to be like anyone else. You can be like, I think when I was young I was like, oh, I want their career, I want to be them, but I don't want to be them. I just want to be kind of inspired by their work, so yeah.
If I go in and demand something from my department, I am emotional and out of control.
And I fought
And I
back.
will say it still happens. Like,
Yeah, but I'll say slowly reality is catching up with this type of man.
Yeah. Scott Ruth.
Yes, for example, good example. And at the very least, I think they're going to be scared back into their little holes at some point. So
Yeah.
like, even if they're not going to go through a completely character transplant and become wonderful overnight, but we might not have to deal with it as much just by them being afraid. That's a good start. I mean, I think for both of us, some of us, I'm not sure, it is a first film, so there are the additional doubts of the first time as well.
Yeah.
So for me, coming out from this experience, which was mostly women, I still feel like during the filmmaking itself, I didn't want to be a troublemaker. And it's my film. If I'm not going to make trouble, who's going to make trouble, you know? But I think what I learned from that was I don't want to get to a point of explosion. I want to fight it at an earlier stage. And I think it's like self-training.
Yeah.
We have to talk ourselves into fighting earlier on, so it doesn't even become that huge of a battle. And the more experience and confidence we get in what we're doing, it becomes easier because you trust your instincts more. So I think one of the things that I did get from this experience, like, part of it's just not, you know, if men think we're too emotional and we can't just change their minds by talking, then we'll just do what we're doing. We'll create the movies we want to create until they catch up, because they'll see we're theater goers, because they see there is financial gain in it. Some people, all they care about is the money, so let the money speak down the line. And it is going to be a slow process, but it's going to work, because I think we're done being quiet.
Yeah.
So, you know. So now we are aware of that. We talk about it. So rather than saying, oh, there's only one role for me out there, I'm going to compete with another woman, it's like, no, please create more roles for us, because we know what we've been doing, and more of us want in. So I think it has opened a door for like more women supporting women, that ability to actually talk about it and know what's going on.
There's more room, yeah.
Well, that reminds me, I mean, Chen and I both became SAG members because there was a loophole during a time where you could create your own content, and if one woman, or I guess it's any person, any person who was in SAG, in the union, was in this production, you would be Taft-Hartley'd. And so a group of women in Chicago took advantage of this opportunity to make our own content, and we Taft-Hartley'd a bunch of women to give us more options in Chicago, and the same was true for Chen.
Yeah. It just shows, like, you have to talk about things. That's how you find the loopholes.
Right.
Gender funded.
I like it.
Men and women. And I want to see not two men. I super appreciate that you are here, guys.
Sam doesn't even have a choice.
Sam doesn't have a choice, so he doesn't
It shouldn't be like, you know, a quilting
It's
club,
all
right?
about
It should be
education eventually,
about
and,
growth.
you know, affirmative action. We do it. For women, we are 21. Things should be different by now, you know. It's so many years we're talking about that, and nothing changed, and we still like.
Someone said the other day, this is the panel that they wish we didn't need anymore, but we still need.
But we need
It
it
was Chelsea,
because we're keeping it with ourselves. You understand?
But at the same time,
Yeah.
there's so many forums where just men, discuss women issues. So we don't want that either, right? We want that balance. If there is a man on this panel, I want to hear what he's going to do
No,
to
it
help.
should be mixed.
Yeah.
And we should have a dialogue that will create the change. We need to educate not just ourselves. So of course, we empower ourselves, and this is super important.
You're in charge of the panel next year.
I like it.
I